Welcome back to Reddit Aliens, everyone. Hello, and again, I'm John. So today, a topic that we've all experienced at some point in our lives. Serious. What's the scariest nightmare you've ever had? Not safe for work. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. I have recurring nightmares where my teeth fall out. It'll start with a wiggly tooth, and then one by one they come out, sometimes without blood. When I wake up, I need to touch to see to make sure they're still there. Eventually, I outsmarted my dreams and was able to wake myself up when it was happening. But now my dreams have outsmarted me, and I'll wake up in my room only to have my teeth fall out again. I felt like I was waking up in the middle of the night, and there was a kid by the bed looking at me. He had no eyes. I felt scared in the dream and woke up staring at the exact spot where he stood. FYI, I was taking medication at the time where one of the side effects were nightmares, so... One that I had when I was a child. I was in the middle of the desert at night and being hunted by coyotes or wolves. As a child, I couldn't tell the difference. I entered an abandoned coliseum, and that's how it ended, but I woke up terrified. Not sure what that was all about. I had this when I was a teenager. My mom was holding a baby in a house that caught fire. For some reason, they didn't burn, but instead melted together and fused to the floor. I can still see my mom's agonized, melted expression, and it terrified me. I slept with my mom that night and refused to explain my dream for years because it scared me so bad. Well, that's just a terrible image. I wonder if there's some meaning to a dream like that. I was hospitalized at the time. I had a dream that I had been transferred to another hospital. Everything felt so real. It was chaos and everyone was ignoring me. So I decided to go outside in my hospital gown barefoot. The sky was bloody red. It was wartime and all the inscriptions were in Japanese. Everyone was running and screaming. I was like, F, this is it. I was petrified and the whole impending doom feeling was overwhelming. I woke up in sweat and tears. It took me hours to shake that feeling of death. This was 2 nights ago. I dreamt that people were raiding my neighborhood, shooting and setting fire to the woods behind my folks' house. In the chaos, someone I care for was shot in front of me and died when I finally dragged them to safety. Every couple months, I have a really vivid dream that involves some kind of demon or spirit. It's never identical, but typically involves things moving or being thrown across the room. I think I must make noise in real life during these dreams because I'll try to shout something in the dream, but the words never come out clearly articulated, and it's like my mouth and vocal cords aren't quite functioning. I had a pretty bad dream a few months ago where I was in my bedroom and everything was effed up. Furniture tipped over, papers and clothing all over the floor. I walked into my bathroom and shut the door, then thought, oh no, I shouldn't have done that. This is going to be scary. As I looked into the mirror, my eyes turned black, the blackness spread, and started running down my face. Then I sat bolt upright in bed, sweaty and breathing hard. This had been happening every few months for years, ever since high school. It hasn't been increasing in intensity or frequency. It just happens every once in a while. I don't know what it means, if anything. I wake up in a cold, wet, dark, suffocated by my surrounding. Everything is dark. I realize I'm naked. I move and realize I'm buried and the material is heavy but mobile. I begin digging myself out. After great struggle, I see a distant light. I dig toward the light. The light grows as I dig. I emerge to observe a 1900s-style war battlefield. I struggle out of the cold, wet, fleshy hole to the sounds of cannons and gunfire and soldiers shooting each other. I find myself in a mound as I get to my feet. I realize I'm standing on dead horse carcass. Went for a few drinks with these 2 random women I just met. They insisted I come back to their house. They seemed nice, so I did. Once I got back, they locked me in, and their house was like a maze, so every time I found what might be a way out, the layout kept changing. So it wasn't the way out anymore. I was trapped. I called my mom and asked her to come and get me because I was scared. She said no. I never did get out of that house before I woke up. It's more of a genre my brain has made. I have lucid nightmares from PTSD, so I know I'm asleep most of the time. Once I realize I'm asleep, I'll try to wake up and I'll just keep waking up in another dream constantly until I wake up. The worst ones are where I see my 2 cats that I lost, long story, and part of my PTSD, and I'll go around asking everyone, usually my family, if they can see them too or if it's just me. Those are the worst because it feels so real despite knowing it's not. I have recurring dreams ever since my house got broken into while I was asleep, that someone is breaking in and I'm trying to yell or scare them off and nothing comes out. Well, the first time this happened, the first night I slept alone in my house after the break-in, I had a dream I heard someone on the roof outside my window. I went and saw a woman trying to break in. She looked me in the eyes, smiled, and her eyes turned pure white. I tried to push her off the roof, but she didn't budge, grabbed my throat, and we both fell off. I woke up in the second we both hit the ground. It wasn't really a nightmare. I had a series of recurring dreams when I was about 10 years old. It was just me walking through a house. Every time I got near the attic access in the hallway, I'd just wake up. A couple of years later, my parents are looking to move and they take us kids to check things out. Second house is that one from the dreams. I just tell them both, yeah, this is the one that I've been having weird dreams about. Ask the realtor, goes pale, eyes wide. Previous homeowner took wife and 2 kids up in the attic and murder-suicide. Realtor wasn't wanting to disclose. After my dad died, I had a dream that he showed back up at the house. Everyone pretended this was normal, leaving me alone in the knowledge that he was dead. The ghost could not be the father I'd loved. He was an unnatural occurrence created by my own inability to work through my grief. I went to a mystic, hoping to return Dad to his place among the dead. The mystic gave me a golden charm and a chalice, which I brought home. Dad was still hovering around the house as if he belonged in the land of the living. I told him I loved him, but that I needed him to leave, reminding him that he was dead. He didn't seem to understand. I broke the chalice against our dining room table and told him to leave me alone until I was ready to see him again. This made him leave and I woke up. It was existentially terrifying to see Dad alive after watching him die. After this, I didn't dream about him again for months. Now, he appears in the background of my dreams rarely prominently. I have a locket that looks a lot like the charm given me in my dream. I wear it most of the time as a reminder that Dad will be with me in a healthy way, where I can go on living and his memory can keep watch over the family. My mother locked me in a cage and started force-feeding me, saying if I was going to be a fat pig, she was going to turn me into sausage. Then she cut my arms and legs off. I was paralyzed somehow, but awake and screaming and crying as loud as I could the whole time. I saw my dad and brother during this and tried to scream for help, but they ignored me, and I realized they were in on it. She then tried to make me eat the sausage made from my limbs, which she cut the meat off the bone, ground up, and filled casings with right in front of me. I was still screaming and crying the entire time. When I refused, she killed me, and I woke up again screaming and crying. When my mom came into the room, I went ballistic and started throwing things at her and hitting her whenever she tried to get close to me. It made me extremely wary of my entire family for a couple of years. I was around 10 years old. She's a perfectly decent mother. She'd never abused me or called me anything hurtful. I just have effed up dreams where the people closest to me hurt or kill me in horrific ways all the time. Most of the time because they secretly hated me all along. Oftentimes in these dreams, I'm drugged so I can't move or feel anything, but I'm awake and able to speak as they take me apart, piece by piece. That's a terrible dream, and I'm sure it's easier said than done to not carry emotions from a dream into the real world, but I've been victim of that. So, girl has a bad dream that you did something wrong, you're the bad guy. I have recurring dreams of walking down a set of dark stairs. There are portholes along the stairs at eye level every 10 steps or so, and outside I can see underwater into the ocean. I follow the stairs deeper, and the water outside of each new porthole is darker until the water looks black. Sometimes there are creatures outside of the portholes, sometimes translucent white jellyfish, sometimes fish with long sharp teeth, white bulging eyes, and bioluminescent spots along their bodies. With every new step, I feel a growing sense of dread and wrongness. Eventually, the stairs end, and I'm alone in a dim room. The room reminds me of a museum. Sometimes whale skeletons hang from the ceiling. Sometimes there are artifacts that look like they could be from an old shipwreck. Sometimes there's old submersibles. But there are always glass case full of more of those dead water creatures, the fish with the long sharp teeth and blank white eyes. The feeling of wrongness is usually overwhelming now, and I wander through the display looking at all the deep sea creatures. Eventually, I'll panic myself awake. I had these a lot more when I was younger, and once in a while the elements would even invade other dreams, like the portholes appearing randomly on the walls of rooms in an unrelated dream. I have no idea why my brain does this. I don't think I've ever seen a porthole in person. I'm not particularly afraid of the ocean, and I think deep-sea abyssal creatures are very interesting, but not in the dream. They are always so unnerving in the dream. I once had a nightmare where my first love blackmailed me to hang myself with barbed wire in the woods because she would kill my parents if I didn't. Second place was some kind of sleep paralysis experience where I lay in my bed with the back to the room. I couldn't move, was half awake, and felt a dark, hostile presence behind me, saying I had only 24 hours to live. It took me roughly 6 hours to realize it was just a messed up nightmare. I had already started to subtly say farewell to my family by that time. Occasionally I'll get a dream about doing something horrific, like murdering someone or somebody from my family. I won't dream an exact murder situation. It will just be weird and disconnected, as all my dreams are. I realize how ridiculous it was when I fully wake up. But in the dream, and the few confused moments when I'm half awake, it's the closest thing I've ever felt to crippling guilt for when you take a life. When the implications finally hit you for what you've done, an actual situation where you wish to yourself, please let this be a dream. Please let everything be okay again. And then it is a dream, so we're all good. Time to continue on to the morning, am I right? Middle of the ocean during a massive thunderstorm in the dead of night, ended with being swallowed by a massive whale. This was a recurring dream I had when I was young, and it caused me to have a huge phobia of deep water that I still have to this day. If I ever see footage on TV from the ocean, it freaks me out, and I have to cover my eyes or leave the room. I was going through Klonopin withdrawal after realizing my doctor got me physically addicted to my anxiety med. One night before extreme sleeplessness set in, I had intensely realistic and absolutely hellish and evil nightmares all night long about my deepest, darkest fears, some of which were so deeply and far back hidden in the depths of my brain that I wasn't even consciously aware I had such fears. Some fears that felt like they were rooted for millennia inside me through evolution. Some of them involving my traumas. Some of them just about things that intensely disgusted me. One of the milder ones, I was running through a weird field that was full of onions and tomatoes, two foods that I can't stand at all, and the smell was repulsive as well as the squishing sound as I stomped through them. Little bits and pieces of crunchy white onions and gross watery tomatoes were flying up into my mouth. When I woke up from that one, I immediately vomited my guts up. Keep in mind that these nightmares were so nauseatingly realistic, it was like reality times a million on a million hits of acid. My senses were dilated to an extreme. In another dream, I was trapped inside a barely lit house with my grandmother chasing me with a butcher's knife, except she kept zipping forward and moving robotically, like someone was pressing fast forward on her. She would zip forward suddenly, every few seconds, moving like some sort of demented video game character, where every time I started to gain distance between us, she would spastically zip forward again and be on my heels with that knife. There was also a lot of deep emotional pain involved with this one, because it was a grandmother that I loved dearly, but had to leave behind due to a lot of life differences that we didn't agree on. The house I was being chased in was like some sort of warped funhouse, and the lighting was weird dim colors like green and red, and a strange pale gray, giving it an even more acid nightmarish effect. Another one involved me trying to keep my little sister away from an actual physical form of Satan. Back then, my little sister was still someone I loved and protected a lot, and despite not being religious at all, I guess my brain still had a lot of religious trauma inside it from when my family tried to beat into me. I don't know how to describe the Satan situation other than it being an intensely real feeling of intuition of the utmost evilest thing possible being near us, and knowing that it was trying to get my baby sister, and it was my job to keep it off of her. This nightmare in particular was extremely strange to me because the Satan thing is not something I'm afraid of at all in reality. This is the nightmare that felt like my mind was pulling out fears that had been rooted inside me through generations. Like my brain was being forced to pull fears out of the deepest, darkest corners of my mind so far back that they weren't even my fears anymore. It was my family's and ancestors'. There were others, but those are the only ones I remember still clear as a day now. Oh, and when I woke up and vomited from the tomato and onion dream, I was in the hospital. so I jolted awake and crawled absolutely drenched in sweat, with my heart pounding so hard I thought I was having a heart attack, to the closest wall besides my bed and threw up the absolute biggest puddle of hospital cafeteria chili ever. A poor nurse had to use like 5 large towels to get it all cleaned up. Benzodiazepine withdrawals are not something to F with. There were many more side effects and withdrawal symptoms I could talk about. Their weeks absolutely horrifying. From exploding head syndrome and not being able to sleep for nearly 2 weeks, to having specifically my sense of smell dilate so much that something inside my nose was twitching kind of like a rabbit nose, and I could smell things from like 100 yards away. It was repulsive, especially the smells that were up close. I could smell if people down the hall had gum in their mouth and what flavor. If they had smoked recently. If a woman was on her period. That was foul and also embarrassing. I could smell people's genitalia and ass and armpits times a million too. It was so bad. This sounds terrible, and I've also heard that about benzos, how it's very difficult to come off of. So, hope everything's better now. A recent one I had, I was at my old middle school. There was a mass shooting. All of my old friends were killed right in front of me. I was the only survivor in a class of 400. I felt the intense terror and guilt when I woke up. The ones that feel real are the worst. Like I remember sitting and laughing with them. That was real. That happened in the past, and my asshole subconscious murders them all. Had a dream I was possessed, but it felt so real. I had this nightmarish sinking feeling and then started making these horrible groan or screeching noises. The scariest part was I was half awake and aware it was happening but sort of helpless to stop it. When I came to, my heart was racing and I apologized profusely to my girlfriend, who was understandably freaked the F out. Felt like I actually lost my sanity for a brief moment, and it happened out of nowhere. I was just thinking about this today. It starts out dumb at first, so bear with me. I had a dream where I was helping the Law & Order SVU team out with a case, and we were all investigating this abandoned house. Then Chucky the doll kept picking us off one by one and killing us in very gory and creative ways. I could describe all of the graphic details because it seriously messed me up. I won't describe it though in case of TW. I had this nightmare years ago, and it still haunts me. It is hard to explain. I would see myself falling in third-person view while me or the camera is zooming out continuously without ever going too far. It feels like I'm constantly falling in a dark room as it expands indefinitely, making me feel small or insignificant. It is a very strong feeling, and it'd feel like this goes on for a very long time, even though my brain somehow knows it's only been 10 minutes. This nightmare doesn't occur very often, but it is the oldest and the most unforgettable nightmare I've had. I dream of it maybe once every 6 months, but I've had this same nightmare for at least 20 years or more. I'm currently 35 years old now. This is gonna sound weird, but me, my best friend, her boyfriend, and my crush, I'm gay, he's homophobic, we're in this van together. My best friend was driving it and looked through someone's window, and they saw us, and they jump up out of the house and punched my crush to death. For context, I watch surgical shows, so it was extremely gory, so much so they wouldn't allow it on TV. Then a random classmate of mine came out of nowhere and shot the lady. Then the dream flashed forward, and I was working in ASDA, and I just had a mental breakdown. Then I woke up, and I was crying, and I started hyperventilating, and it was really bad, because I've liked him for 3 years, and I really care about him, so I was panicking badly. Used to constantly lucid dream when this happened. I was walking down this random path with a bunch of the closest people in my life at the time, and everything was chill. Come this man who starts shooting and or stabbing each and every person right in front of me without hesitation. Despite being fully aware this was a dream and normally having control of what happens, at least somewhat, I froze up and just watched as everyone dropped like flies. Once I was the only one left, he shot me, and I woke up all sweaty and in tears. For months, this screwed with me somewhat because I thought that if anything real ever did happen, I would freeze up again. Although nothing near this serious has happened to me, luckily enough, I've slowly regained some of that confidence after throwing myself at minor situations, even if they don't really compare. Probably one from when I was a kid. My mom's side of the family were all sitting at a long table, Last Supper style, and laughing while my mom's uncle, so my great-uncle, chased me on all fours, but his limbs were like spider limbs, and he had vampire teeth. Everything was green, sort of like when you turn the green light on an LED strip light. My mom's whole family was laughing while my great-uncle chased me, and it was horrifying. I don't know why I even thought he was a monster in the dream. He was cool as hell in real life.